listening to Your Secret is Safe with Me, non-judgmental talk about infidelity with Dr. Marie Murphy. If you're looking for new perspectives on complicated relationship issues, you've come to the right place.
Days go by, they're crawling by.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Marie Murphy. I'm a relationship coach, and I specialize in helping people who are having affairs decide what they want to do. On this show, I share life coaching tools that you can put into practice in your romantic relationships and into your life as a whole. I also talk with professionals who help people grapple with relationship challenges and related matters, including lawyers and mediators, body workers, sociologists, and healthcare providers. Today, I have John Corcoran of Rise 25 here with me. John has done thousands of interviews with successful entrepreneurs, investors, and podcasters. And today, John and I are going to be talking about feelings, which is usually a topic that people try to avoid. But as we will discuss, there is so much to be gained from cultivating a conscious relationship with our emotions.
All right, great, Dr. Murphy. Pleasure to be back with you again. And before we get into this topic, first, this episode is brought to you by Marie Murphy, PhD, which provides shame-free, blame-free, non-judgmental relationship coaching. You can talk with Dr. Murphy about the things that, maybe seem too messy or weird or stigmatized to share with your best friend or your spouse or even your therapist. You can schedule a free 30-minute consultation with her at her website, mariemurphyphd.com. All right, so in this topic, we're going to be talking about emotions. Now, let's just start with, let's say that someone's listening to this episode and they're having an affair and they're just going through a roller coaster of emotions and they're not sure exactly what to do. But you say that it's really important that you stop and understand those emotions and understand the distinctions between emotions and circumstances and experiences and all those different things. So let's dive into that topic. Take us away first just on what people are going through and how they should tackle understanding their emotions.
Yeah. Okay. So there's a lot of pieces to this. We'll try and do this one step at a time. First of all, if you are having an affair or if you're dealing with any kind of infidelity, you may be experiencing a lot of different feelings, and they may be intense. Some of them may be wonderful. And some of them may be pretty darn difficult and uncomfortable. And it may be really hard to make sense of all of these things and just handle the sheer physicality of the experience of the emotions. And first of all, I want to say that this is normal. This happens to people. It's not a sign that there's anything wrong. The thing is, most of us don't have much of a relationship with our emotions, and we're always having emotional experiences of one kind or another as humans.
All day long, right? Yeah.
Yeah, all day, every day.
Yeah.
And they drive our actions in ways that we don't necessarily understand. We don't necessarily understand where they come from or what causes them. And so we don't really know what the hell to do with them. And then we get into a situation like having an affair that is full of emotional, forgot the word I was going to use, but it's a very emotionally intense experience. And at a time like that, it becomes kind of impossible to avoid our emotional state.
Yeah.
It becomes hard to shove it aside.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's, I want to ask you, so let's take a step backwards. So emotions, we all experience them. We all know what they are, but it would be helpful to define what that is or, draw parameters around what we're talking about when we're talking about emotions.
Yeah, definitely. And actually, to your point, I don't know that we all know what they are. And in fact, I will tell you that I did not really understand what an emotion or a feeling was until I was in my late 30s. And that's a fair amount of life to go through, like not really having a great sense of what to do with my feelings. And I think this is true for a lot of people. Like we have a sense that we feel really happy or really sad or really angry. Like some of this is accessible to us as lay people that don't have any special training in what emotions are. But there's also a lot of like kind of half information or misinformation circulating in our society about what feelings are and how they work. So let me share the definition with you that I have found to be the most practical and the most helpful and the most actionable. And that is this: a feeling or an emotion is a set of sensations that you experience in your body to which you assign a one-word name. Grief, joy, fear, disgust, anger, desire, lust, and so on. Right? And all of these kinds of experiences have a particular physical quality to them. You know, and we kind of know this experientially, right? Like we kind of have the sense that it feels good to feel happy. It feels good to feel love. It doesn't feel great to feel shame. If we feel anger, we feel like we want to punch the wall or kick the cat or yell at our partner or drink a lot of wine or, you know, smoke some crack. Who knows? You know, whatever your thing is. And that is a starting point to be sure. But what we need to learn is, number one, that there is a huge variety of quote unquote normal emotions within our human experience. They all have value. Some of them may feel nicer to feel than others. Some of them can be very uncomfortable to feel, but they're all important in their own way. So that's one thing, and we'll probably come back to that. But the other important point is that most of us confuse feelings with thoughts. And what that means is this: we often say things like, well, I feel like she doesn't love me anymore. Or I feel like my boss is angry with me. Or I feel like so-and-so doesn't respect me. And that's not a feeling. That is a thought. A thought is a sentence in your mind. It is a statement of how you perceive the world around you. It's part of your ongoing internal narrative about how things are, about how you are, about how your life is, about what's going on.
So that just kind of confuses it, because we say, I feel like, but it's actually expressing a thought rather than expressing a feeling. So we kind of lump those two together.
Exactly. It's a mishmash.
Yeah.
And it's not that there isn't truth there. I mean, you know, if you think that your boss doesn't respect you, you may feel disrespected. But when we try to lump these things together in this way, it's harder to clarify what we're thinking and how we're feeling, and it's harder to make changes.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. So there's a physicality to emotions. Is there ever not a physicality to emotions, or is it just various degrees? Is there always a physical element to an emotion?
That is such a great question. So my answer to that is yes, there is always a physicality to our emotions. But here's the thing. Most of us are so cut off from our physical experiences of living that we're not really aware of the physicality of our emotions. And what I mean by that is most of us live in our heads. We experience the world through our cognitive processes. And that's pretty normal because well, maybe not everything, but so many things in our society direct us to do this. But as anyone who has worked in non-Western healing traditions will tell you, and a lot of other people might tell you too, the body and the mind are not really as distinct as we tend to think that they are. There's an ongoing, continuous, inextricable relationship between our bodies and our minds. And so when we think a thought, it leads to a physical experience, which we call a feeling or an emotion. And I like the word emotion because it connotes energy, or E, in motion, emotion. So we think something and then we feel something, but most of us don't really tune into the feeling part. So I talk to folks all the time who are like, well, I don't really know what anger feels like, or I don't really know what hope feels like. I don't really know what fear feels like. And that that is probably true, but that doesn't mean that there isn't a physical experience of the emotion for them.
Mm.
It's that they've, tuned out of that for so long that it's hard to tune back into the physical quality of the emotion itself.
Or perhaps they don't want to.
Well, that too, right? Definitely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And a lot of the time we tune out of our emotions because we don't know what to do with them.
Mm-hmm,
And this is true especially of the difficult ones.
Yeah. Or they're so distracting that we've worked for years in many cases to sublimate them in a sense so that we can continue to function. Because if we were overrun by the physical nature of these emotions, whether it's fear or whatever, then we wouldn't be able to function on a day-to-day basis.
Right. That's what we think. And what I teach people is that isn't necessarily the way it has to be. In fact, it definitely isn't the way it has to be. So here's the thing. If we think a thought, like let's say we think, my spouse doesn't love me anymore. Or let's say we're having an affair and we're afraid we're going to get caught. Maybe we think that our partner is already on to us. Maybe we think, oh my God, they saw me with so-and-so at the bar last week. Or their best friend, let's say this. My wife's best friend saw me at the bar with the person I'm having an affair with last week. I'm going to get caught. I'm busted already. Even though that is not my situation, as I say those words, like I feel the fear, like I feel the anticipation of something bad happening. And it's an intense physical experience. If I let myself feel the physical sensations that come from that thought, they will arise, gain intensity, and then dissipate in about 90 seconds. Maybe a little longer, maybe not quite so long. That's not that bad. If we can learn how to sit with the physical sensations that come with an emotion and let them pass through us, they come and go pretty quickly.
So it's better, and it's better to do that than to suppress it entirely. Is it better for the body, better for your emotions, just better for your mental state?
8 days a week. Yes, for lots of different reasons. But let me just say a little bit more about this and we'll come back to some of those reasons. So
sorry, I'm jumping ahead.
No, that's okay. That's fine. Doing this I'm not suggesting that this is necessarily easy, especially if you're not in the habit of trying to do this. But the point is that it's possible. It is possible to learn with practice to sit with the physical experiences of our emotions rather than resisting them, rather than ignoring them, rather than numbing them out, rather than distracting ourselves from them. And when we do this, we're able, well, first of all, we feel different and usually better pretty quickly. We may feel a lot more calm. We may just feel clear. We may not feel the intensity of the emotion anymore. And that's really liberating, number one. Yeah. And when we're in that calmer state, we're able to then think more clearly about what's going on and take actions that serve our highest good. So let's just come back to this example of like, I think I've gotten busted. I think my spouse's best friend saw me at the bar with my affair partner and I am freaking out. Okay. So if I do not let those feelings go, I may be tempted to like, to God only knows what, maybe run into the other room and confess everything to my spouse right away without even thinking about what I want to say. And that may or may not serve our highest good.
Or numb it. Other things, other ways of dealing with it.
Or you can just numb the feeling out. I mean, there are 100 million ways of doing that, especially in our society today when everybody has a device at their fingertips and there are a million socially acceptable things that you can do in public to distract yourself from your feelings at just about any moment, even during a funeral.
Great point. Let's talk about the differences between feelings, circumstances, and thoughts. I think you've touched on this already, but particularly circumstances, the kind of the differences between those two, how you separate those two out? Because, in many cases, like, put yourself in a certain circumstance and you might immediately assume that the feeling and the emotion are kind of completely intertwined. But so talk a little bit about the difference between those.
Yeah. So this, I like to talk about this as where our feelings come from. And it's kind of like how babies are made. The stork doesn't bring the babies, people. Big news. So our feelings, we usually, and let me back up, we tend to think that our circumstances cause our feelings, meaning that events in the world cause our feelings, or other people's actions cause our feelings. And this is a big thing in romantic relationships. There's this idea that's very prevalent out there, even in, couples therapy and very well-meaning approaches to relationship assistance. There's this idea that if our partner does something in particular, it will cause us to feel a particular way. So, if our partner listens to us in a certain way, we'll feel understood. If a partner cheats on us, we'll feel bad. If a partner, I don't know, calls us when they say they're going to, then we'll feel good. And if they don't, then we'll feel terrible. And that's not quite how it works. And this is really important because this is like the key to liberation and sanity as far as I'm concerned. Other people do what they do. Things happen in the world that are beyond our control. They never cause us to feel however we feel in relationship to them. Our perceptions about them, or our perceptions of them, our stories about them, our thoughts about these things are what cause our feelings. And this is so important because, humans are meaning-making creatures. It's just what we do. We're always generating an internal narrative about what's going on in order to have a sense of our lives as coherent events, right? Mm-hmm. I'm like this. I'm the kind of person who blank. My partner is like this. My life is like that. And to an extent, all of this is helpful. I mean, if we were to try and decide who we were every single day of our lives, we probably would have a million decisions to make before we could even brush our teeth in the mornings. And so that's not necessarily what we want to do. We don't need to reinvent ourselves every single day, at least not completely. But the problem is that our stories about ourselves and our stories about our partners and our stories about our lives don't always help us. They don't always make us feel happy. And here's the thing. Circumstances are technically neutral until we give them meaning. So here's an example. This doesn't have anything to do with relationships. Some people might say, like, natural disasters are bad, or winning the lottery is good. But neither of those things are inherently true. They're given meaning by what we personally think about them. And here's the deal. I'm not saying that natural disasters aren't necessarily bad and that winning the lottery isn't necessarily good. The thing is that more than one thing is always true about any given circumstance.
It's like, it kind of reminds me of a tree falls in the woods. Does anyone hear it? If a earthquake happens and no one's injured by it, is it a bad thing? Maybe not. I love that, that's a great point about natural disasters, not inherently being bad, because it's a great way of kind of separating out that idea of feelings and circumstances. So let's bring this back to the context of romantic relationships. So in the context of romantic relationships, how do you use these ideas of separating out circumstances and feelings?
Yeah. So we tend to think that if our partner does something, that it makes us feel a certain way. So for instance, like, let's say you ask your partner to do the dishes and they don't do them. You may create this whole narrative about why that happened. And maybe it's not positive. Maybe it's, oh my God, they weren't listening to me. They don't really care about the household. They're not doing their share. They don't care about supporting me in the way that I need to be supported. They're so lazy, etc. You don't know for sure that any of that is true.
Yeah.
And yet, if you begin to believe it, it is going to create a certain set of feelings that you experience.
Mm.
And here's the thing. Our feelings give us the capacity for different types of actions or different inactions. So if you're feeling bad about your partner, I mean, if you have this like running belief that they don't do anything around the house, they don't help when you ask them to, they're so lazy, etc., or inconsiderate or whatever it is, that's going to create a set of feelings that impels you to act with them in ways that may not contribute to your relationship being all that wonderful.
Mm.
By contrast, if you were to look at your partner's failure to do the dishes or take out the trash and say, oh my God, I know they're so busy today, like, no big deal.
Different
This doesn't
story.
have to mean that much to me.
Yeah.
Your feelings about your partner may be positive, they might be neutral.
Mm.
And either way, that's going to create a certain set of likely actions on your part, which your partner then will respond to. And then a whole dynamic gets created. And here's the thing. I'm not saying that people shouldn't take out the trash if they say they're going to. That's not the point. The point isn't that you don't have preferences that matter. The point is that you get to choose how big a deal you want to make the things that bother you. And that's kind of that. I mean, we could spend a whole 2 hours on that single point alone.
Yeah.
But the essence of what I'm getting at here is there's no one inherent meaning baked into your partner's action.
That's a great point. Really interesting point. We'll have to do a whole nother episode on that topic. So, but let's talk about, I want to ask you about how we can create more feelings that we want to experience in the context of what we're talking about here. Are there ways that we can do that? And the kind of the flip side of that is also, learning how to deal with feelings that we don't want to experience.
Okay, let's back up a little bit. So the latter thing that you said speaks to the spectrum of emotions that are a normal part of human life. And I use the word normal pretty lightly. But
that's another hour-long conversation.
Yeah, perhaps so. But what I mean by that is, our capacity for feeling as humans, our emotional capacity runs the gamut from pretty terrible to pretty amazing. But in our society, we tend to assign good meanings to certain feelings and bad meanings to other feelings. And what I mean by that is we think it's good to feel good and we think it's bad to feel bad. But here's the deal. The physical experience of an emotion, the physical sensations that come with a feeling aren't inherently good or bad. We make them so through our beliefs about them. So for instance, if you've ever known anyone who kind of loves being a little depressed all the time, which some people do. I mean, some people kind of like delight in melancholy. Some people embrace that feeling state.
Right.
Whereas for other people, like they can't even tolerate a little bit of it.
Right. Or other people who happiness makes them feel guilty or ashamed or bad in some way.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. Some of us question happiness the second it shows up. Some of us question contentment the second it shows up. Some of us are terrified to feel joy. Definitely. But that isn't about the inherent quality of the physical experience itself. It's our overlay of beliefs, not just about the emotion itself and what it means to feel a certain feeling, but also our beliefs about what's possible for us. And this is really important. So now I'm kind of like getting away from your original question here, but this is really important because oftentimes when folks are having affairs, they'll come to me and tell me how deliriously happy they are with their new person. And then in the next breath, they'll tell me that they shouldn't feel this way. And this reveals something about what they believe is okay for them to have and what they believe maybe is even possible for them in their lives. And here's the deal. I mean, the social stigma surrounding infidelity is certainly a thing. It's certainly real in the sense that people believe in it, and thus, we may have to contend with it. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you're not allowed to find a way to engage in the relationship that you're having that isn't okay, quote unquote. And moreover, even if that relationship doesn't work out or doesn't come to fruition, so to speak, it doesn't mean it's not okay for you to feel that kind of happiness. And so one of the reasons why having an affair is such a particularly interesting time to start to get to know your feelings better is because there can be some really difficult feelings that come with it that you either have to learn how to tolerate or else or deal with the fallout of your actions that may come from not knowing how to deal with your discomfort. But it's also an opportunity to ask yourself, how good can I stand it?
Mm.
What do I do when I feel amazing?
Mm-hmm. Especially for someone who hasn't experienced that type of emotion for a long period of time. All kinds of conflicts, I'm sure, come up.
Yeah.
Any further thoughts on this before we wrap up this episode?
Oh my God, so many more.
I'm sure we could go a lot longer.
Yeah, well, let me say a couple of things here. So one of the things that I try to do with folks who come to me and are having an affair and are just totally in a somewhat agitated state about the whole thing is help them look at the situation in more neutral terms. So sometimes people come to me and they say, I feel really badly about what I'm doing. I shouldn't be doing this. And that is a thought. It's a perception. It's a belief. It's not a circumstance. And a lot of people may believe otherwise, but that doesn't make it true. And so what I try to do is I help people get a sense of the neutral details of their situation, the actual facts of what's happening without any overlay of what it all means. And from that place, we can begin to kind of figure out, okay, what's important to you here? What do you actually want to do? And the reason why this is possible is because looking at a situation in more neutral terms takes some of the emotional charge out of the whole thing. And this is helpful for a lot of reasons. And one is what I like to call the vortex of negative thinking and negative feeling. So let's say you're having an affair and you feel ashamed or guilty about what you're doing. Oftentimes, the layers of meaning that we assign to that are, oh, it's bad to feel guilty or it's bad to feel shame. And therefore, I end up just feeling more guilty or more ashamed. And then we take that to mean that we're doomed. We take all of these feelings, these compounding difficult feelings, as a sign that something is wrong, as a sign that we have to do X, Y, or Z. And really, the feelings in and of themselves aren't inherently meaningful. They're a consequence of what we're thinking. They're a consequence of what we believe to be true. And so when we can start to step back and shift our thinking about what's going on, we can then, change our feeling state in such a way that we can begin to decide what we want to do from a perspective that isn't clouded by panic or fear or confusion or what have you.
This has been great. Marie, where can people go? Remind everyone where they can go and learn more about you.
You can check out my website at mariemurphyphd.com. If you're interested in speaking with me, you can book a free consultation there. I look forward to talking with you.
All right, great. Thanks so much, Marie.
Thanks, John.
Thanks for listening to Your Secret is Safe with Me with Dr. Marie Murphy. Make sure to click subscribe to get updates on our latest episodes.